Hello my friends. I'm going to show you how to culture the mycelium shiitake mushroom.
These are the logs that I'm going to inoculate with the mycelium. And you can see here I have all the from about 3 inches all the way up to this one, which is right there. That's 9 inches. So the mycelium, when it's inoculated, it's going to be growing in this sapwood out in here and in between the bark, the cambium layer. So it'll be in this area. And the bark is intact, and wherever the wood is exposed, we're going to seal it with a paraffin or wax. And here you can see a cut branch that'll be covered, and same as some of the others. The smaller ones, they have a lot of small branches that will be needing to be covered with the wax. And I'm using a paraffin because it's cheap. Beeswax works really well, but the paraffin is super cheap. Now the ends of these I'm going to brush the wax on to seal them. The smaller ones you can dip right into the pot. These are a 5/16 inch dowel, and because they were soaked and have the culture on there, they've expanded. So I'm using 21/64 drill bit. And we had to drill the log. And you have to go in at least the depth of the dowel. These are 1 inch dowels, so I'm going in about 1.5 inches. And I'm going to stagger the holes. Now these logs, they've been, the tree has been cut about 3 months ago. And you don't want to have logs that are too old, and you don't want too fresh. If you cut a tree down, you need to let it rest for about 3 weeks. I'm using oak. Oak has its own antivirus, antibacterial substance in it, and you have to let that die or get out of the wood, because that will block the growth of the mycelium into the oak. So you want at least 3 weeks old after you cut it, and you really don't want to leave it on the ground longer than what you have to, so that foreign mycelium from other mushrooms get into it. So this is about 3 months, which it's okay, especially with the larger wood. It looks like it's fresh cut. So let's continue drilling. Okay, I'm going to do the entire circumference this way, and then after they're in, I'm going to check the fit before I do them all. Okay. I can't push it in, so that's about right, but it started. And then you just want to tap it in. You want it to be just a tad below the surface of the bark. And then we're going to seal that with our paraffin. So let me finish drilling and put the plugs in, and then I'll show you what we do with the sealing.
As I'm drilling this log, I'm really not counting how many holes that I'm putting into the log, but I'm spacing those holes about 3 to 4 inches apart. And when I finish with all the drilling, it comes out to be roughly around 50 holes or plugs for this size log.
There's our start, there's our finish, all the way around the log. Here's a close-up. There it is. and the white is the mycelium.
Now, at the onset of this project, I tried to be very sanitary with everything that I was doing. I washed my hands many times. I scrubbed the face of my hammer and the hammerhead with steel wool. And by doing all this and then touching the log and being outside, I'm sure the sanitation isn't pulling through everything.
Used about half, so that's roughly 50 to this log. And we can get one more like this. The others I'll wax the ends, and I'll wait for my mycelium culture to grow and mature, and then I'll do the rest of the logs. Here's the branch that was cut off. So we hit that, and then we start covering these.
When you inoculate a log with a mushroom spore, you want to do it with only one type. Different spores will be in competition with each other if you try to use more than one. Also, with the number of the spores that are in this log, roughly 50, that's giving a jump start on the Shiitake mycelium. And if there is any other type of mycelium that may have got contaminated into this, then volume of the 50 plugs or spore will offset and dominate and keep it as one only.
End of the log.
It's important to keep your logs from drying out. That would damage the mycelium and restrict it from growing. I like the idea of not having to do maintenance on this, so I'm going to keep this in a moist environment. So I'll set these to cure in my woods, which is always damp.
This also keeps the log from drying out. I do this when I cut wood and I want to make lumber, and I'll coat the end with wax. Also, with this coated like this, when you stand them up along a tree, that end can be on the ground and it's sealing off the mycelium that would be in the earth from entering into the bottom of the log. And you can hit these ones a couple of times to make a good cap over them. And I melt this wax in a little crock pot, and these are ones that I pick up at a flea market or sale for about $2 to $5 each. So I get a lot of use out of these. Sometimes it's good to use beeswax, but beeswax is so expensive compared to paraffin. So the paraffin works great. So after this is sealed, then there's no open wounds through the bark. I'm doing this at my house, and I'm doing it on the back of the truck because I'm going to drive this about 1/4 of a mile into the woods on my property, and that's where I'm going to leave these, and I can pretty much forget about them for about 9 months or so. And that's about how long it takes the mycelium to culture this. And then when the atmospheric conditions are right, temperature and humidity, it'll start spewing some mushrooms for us. And it'll produce for quite a number of years. And the larger logs will produce longer than those smaller diameter ones. There's the second end. I cut this about 2.5 feet, and most of the smaller ones are about 4 foot long. And this is shorter because of the weight. I do have to move this. Okay, the pot's unplugged, and I'm going to heat it up. It's still hot, it's still full of wax, but I'm going to seal the end of the second log, take it back in, plug it in, and then I'll drill, set the plugs, and bring the pot back up. So, time for a second log. Remainder of 100. So 2 logs, roughly 50 each. Okay, these I set off the ground. I set them on large stones. I have them so that they won't roll. And these are going to stay here for a good while. They'll stay moist. There's the other one. And when it gets closer to a harvest time, I'll lean them up against the tree. And that'll be my mushroom post.
Thanks for watching, my friends. Bye-bye.